months, my life has just been a struggle between sanity and madness.
Solitary confinement is something one cannot understand unless they're made to go through it. There are various cases where this has been true since people do seem to go mad, and it is known to be a torture mechanism in prisons. But what if there was a show that made an individual experience this solitary treatment until he went mad, only for a massive audience to watch and cheer? Yes, this is the crazy plot of the Hulu documentary, The Contestant. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin.
When he goes crazy, it's sure to be on TV.
Who is Tomoaki Hamatsu? What's it all about? Tomoaki Hamatsu is the name of the person we will talk about today, even though Japan and most of the world by now might know him as Nasubi, which stands for eggplant in Japanese, which was meant to be a joke on his long face. There's a lot to see in this person than the crazy show that made him a celebrity. Just like most other struggling artists, the comedian in the case of Hamatsu wanted to get fame. And even though he didn't get much support from his family, he went for it, and Tomoaki did get his claim to fame, but at what cost? The latest documentary from Hulu titled The Contestant talks about this journey, and it is one of the craziest and most inhumane stories you will probably ever see. The Contestant brings the accounts of both Tomoaki Hamatsu and Toshio Tsuchiya, the producers of the crazy show, as they both talk about what they felt during and after the show. Tsuchiya produces the popular Denpa Shōnen segment, a reality show that would be an absolute success nationwide. Over the years, Tsuchiya was dedicated to how far he could take his show to make it entertaining for people and was good at his job. As Hamatsu went to Tokyo looking for fame, he ended up auditioning for Tsuchiya's next big project, and the audition was based on a lucky draw. Yes, a lucky draw would define the life of Hamatsu for the 15 months that followed, and Tomoaki won the draw. He was then made to participate in a show where he was put up alone and naked in an apartment with a bare minimum and with the means to enter mail-in sweepstakes until he would win 1,000,000 yen. All this happened without Hamatsu being aware that this was being televised, and all of Japan watched as he went into the endeavor. There are lots of details that we will discuss later that make the concept of this disturbing and one of the worst forms of human torture. Eventually, Hamatsu started winning the sweepstakes and receiving various prizes, but they were hardly ever what he needed. But when he would get food like rice or dog food, there would be genuine satisfaction from him, and the world would watch as he rejoiced with each of these wins. He was dedicated to winning the show and wouldn't give up. Instead, he expressed his exhaustion in the diary that was given to him. Tsuchiya would check in on him occasionally, and he would think that he had won, only to be told that some update was being made. One of these updates included a change of location, when some people figured out his location, but he was told that this was being done for renewed luck so he could win the sweepstakes. At times, he would win items he didn't require, yet there would be genuine happy reaction from him about these wins, as if these items were his only window to the outside world that he was missing so much. Finally, after 335, when he won the game and earned 1,000,000 yen worth of sweepstakes, things took a crazy turn. Tsuchiya returned his clothes and was taken to South Korea, where he was treated to a feast and later taken to an amusement park, which clearly showed how much he enjoyed his freedom, but there was a price to all of this. Even though the challenge was over, Tsuchiya had different plans for the show and decided to extend it, but this time it would be based in Korea, and the idea was to see if Hamatsu could survive with Korean sweepstakes. Even though it was shown as if Hamatsu accepted the move readily, there was disagreement on his part, but somehow he got swayed into continuing the game. This time around, the challenge was difficult to start with, considering he had to write the emails in Korean, a completely different language, and he took his time to learn it and then start anew in a game he had started almost a year back. When he first auditioned for the show, Tsuchiya was like a god to him, an individual who could make him famous. But now he had genuine hatred for the producer, and he decided to use the expertise he had gained to play against him. And he sure did manage to do that, considering he neared his goal fast enough. But the producers were going to end this content slowly and decided to change the goal. The initial goal was for a flight return ticket in the business class to Japan, and it would undergo many changes over the weeks and shift to the first class. Yes, they would not let him go quickly, but Hamatsu managed to win these targets in the next few weeks. Finally, Tsuchiya decided to go to Korea, and when he met Hamatsu, Hamatsu had no idea what had happened. It took him some time to comprehend the entire thing, and even then, he did not trust that this was the end of the whole ordeal. Later, he would be taken to a live stage where a replica of the rooms from the show had been set up. He wasn't aware that a live audience was surrounding him and was about to be revealed to them, so he started going through the usual format and stripped himself. Right then, the walls around him fell, and he discovered himself on a stage with a massive audience clapping for him. While everyone expected him to enjoy his success, Hamatsu was stupefied and couldn't comprehend it. He wasn't aware that this entire ordeal was being televised, and it shocked him, and he kept wondering why they were laughing at him. After being released, Hamatsu would try to return to everyday life, but many things in the past year had taken a toll on him. He wouldn't be able to make eye contact with people, and wearing clothes he never managed to win using the sweepstakes made him feel weird and sweaty. Even though the show ended, and it would become a massive success with around 17 million viewers tuning in every Saturday night when it aired, certain things remain an absolute mystery, but this wasn't the end of Hamatsu's story.
Tonight, big in Japan.
But what happened to Hamatsu after the show? Did his life take a dramatic turn? Even though most of the world was watching the show from a third-person perspective, Hamatsu's family didn't look at it the same way. They were traumatized and wanted it to end and didn't participate in any of the discussions when people tried to reach for them for interviews. The times when Hamatsu mentioned thinking of committing suicide affected his family, and they just wanted him to get out of it. When Hamatsu told him he would become a performer after going to Tokyo, they only asked him one thing: whatever you do, don't get naked. After the show ended, the fact that he had not kept his promise made him wonder if they would accept him, but they welcomed him with everything, which made him more hopeful because this lonely world now had people. After a while, as he did the press for the show, he started stating that social interactions felt weird to him, and he didn't know how to communicate with people. Wearing clothes made him feel restless and sweaty. An event like this certainly had a massive impact on someone's life. Hamatsu became a sensation, but it was not the kind he had thought about when starting his career. People would know him as Nasubi, associated with the title of the show, and this name was given by people in his childhood for his long face. As he tried to return to his original passion for comedy or acting, people would give him the same gigs of being naked or going through a setting similar to the show. It would become a scar that people would associate with him, and it did become a burden, according to him. I feel like I had a big cross on my back, so heavy I couldn't really stand up straight. While people mentioned the show, Hamatsu couldn't watch it because of how humiliating it became for him. And according to him, when he was shifted to Korea and made to do another challenge, it was the worst moment of his life. But if you watch the show, it feels like it took him a second to strip and go on with the challenge in Korea. Tsuchiya had told him that he had become furious in Korea, and all the rage in his body had started to come, but now he felt it was the lowest he had felt. Another major thing was the toll on things he had stopped doing because they affected him physically and mentally. He says he doesn't write postcards anymore because he has done enough of that to last a lifetime. Tsuchiya had given him a jar of kimchi before the show began in Korea, and even kimchi had an effect on him because it was the only food he had before he started winning the sweepstakes in Korea. Having kimchi now had lost the impact it had before. Not wearing clothes for almost the entirety of the 15 months had a physical effect on the skin, and it had become thicker like elephant skin. But one does wonder if he ever thought about suing the producers because he was hardly aware of the events that happened while he was kept in solitary confinement. Various people mentioned to him about suing them because he was made to go through a human rights violation and would make complete sense to take legal action over it. But he stated Tsuchiya was very popular. Once you were on his program, you were guaranteed fame. Denpa Shōnen was a show that everybody, aspiring actors and comedians, really wished to be a part of. Instead of hurting other people by suing them just to gain some money for myself, I decided to accept my past. I was more into acceptance of my life. I feel like I can use that hatred and anger, that negative energy, and make it into positive energy within myself. And this acceptance is what will bring an extraordinary change in his life. Around 2011, Japan was hit by two major natural calamities, followed by a nuclear disaster in Fukushima. Since Fukushima was Hamatsu's home place, he would get involved in this relief and help people and other groups bring relief. People would be happy to see him come and talk to them because of his popularity, and this was the first time that Hamatsu witnessed how he could use his traumatic experience for good. He would speak to more people, and then he decided to dedicate something to Fukushima to raise awareness about the region. Hamatsu decided to climb Everest and dedicate it to Fukushima, but it would be a failure considering a major avalanche would hit him. But he didn't step back and instead jumped right into relief for the people in Nepal, where the earthquake had happened that brought the avalanche. Finally, in 2016, after numerous failed attempts, he successfully scaled Mount Everest. But the one thing he really came to Tokyo for, comedy, wasn't something he would have much success in. Later, he became a native talent in Fukushima, appearing in various dramatic stage performances after finding the troupe Eggplant Way. A take on Nasubi, he would appear in different projects from film to television and even the popular game 438 Shibuya Scramble. Yes, while the world laughed at Hamatsu, he found a way to use this for the good instead of putting himself down for his past, even though the documentary directed by Claire Tilly tries to show things that are okay between Hamatsu and Tsuchiya. By showing the time when Tsuchiya helped in crowdfunding his Everest mission, there are differences between the two that the now changed Hamatsu would probably never address. Is it controversial? There are a billion questions that pop up when you go through what happened in Denpa Shōnen and how the producers treated Hamatsu. Even though Tsuchiya himself addresses the darkest of moments in the reality show, he doesn't seem to regret it as much as he should and is instead proud of it. When the challenge ended and Hamatsu was brought into another fake room on the stage in Tokyo, he quickly took off his clothes because of the trauma that he had been through. The idea of escaping this situation didn't strike his head, and it didn't come even when the walls fell out and he saw the audience surrounding him. Tsuchiya was proud of capturing this moment on screen, but it felt like the worst thing to make a human being go through by anyone. When Hamatsu first took part in the lucky draw for the show, he wasn't clear about what would happen and he was taken directly into the room where he would begin his isolation. When he asked the producer if this show would be televised, Tsuchiya told him it wouldn't. But this was only an attempt from Tsuchiya to make sure that Hamatsu was comfortable with the cameras in the room. There was no consent that he was made to sign, and he was immediately put into something that would change his life forever. Even though the entire thing sounds like it would be comparable to the 1998 film The Truman Show, it is the worst version of what Jim Carrey went through. One can say that this reality show was more of a combination of 2003's Old Boy and The Truman Show. Even though the door was unlocked and Hamatsu could have left, he didn't. This decision might sound bizarre, but it makes sense considering the promise the show had for his future and as a performer. He thought this would be his big break. The fact that he was in Tsuchiya's show made him endure every moment of suffering and go on with the challenge till he reached his goal. The documentary shows Tsuchiya is up for making Hamatsu experience crazy circumstances for maximum entertainment. Even though the people seem to be laughing at Hamatsu, the entire event was a commentary on how far society would go for entertainment as they witnessed a man suffer for food and watch him go mad in isolation. There is a reason why Tsuchiya has no regrets regarding the show and why he has so much pride in the entire ordeal. To Tsuchiya, this was nothing new, and there are various seasons of the show that dealt with somewhat similar concepts, and the fact that they would go wrong made it more real. Western culture might have difficulty digesting this because most reality shows are well orchestrated and scripted. We're looking at you, Big Boss, and all those island shows where people argue about the stupidest things to create tension. Tsuchiya was responsible for ensuring that the entire shoot for a day in the life of Hamatsu's stay, the best 6 minutes, were put out for the world to watch. Denpa Shōnen did eventually get cancelled when the government finally took action against shows depicting explicit events. But that is not the solution because these shows depended on the audience, and it was the audience's response that made Hamatsu repeat the challenge anew in South Korea. The contestant can get under your skin because of the continuous presence of the camera around Hamatsu even after the show ended. There is even a scene in the documentary where he is meeting his family and the camera follows him there and moves around, and for a second it feels like he should have gone this time away from the camera. He should get the time to recover from what he has undergone. It is straightforward for us to judge if a reality show is accurate, but we hardly wonder what the person subjected to the situation in the show is going through. The producers managed to capture the most bizarre, crazy, and wild moments just for the sake of the voyeuristic audience that will stop watching right when there's a lack of drama. Watching Hamatsu suffer through TV and laughing at the jokes is a mockery of how far humanity has fallen to seek some inexplicable pleasure.
But he still didn't know that he was well known across Japan.
Other challenges and contestants from the show. Even though the documentary fails to explore the reality of shows like this and how they are acceptable to the audience, we can get an idea of it based on the other concepts of the show explored. While Hamatsu's show was the most successful, a later challenge explored two comedians on a desert island, without any food or any clue about their location. Their goal was to create a reaction and reach Tokyo, but the show didn't end there, and as they had to go from India to Indonesia on a pedal. Another one that rings close to Hamatsu's story was when the loyalties of fans of the Central League teams were tested by a challenge where they would be put in a room and food would only be given to them if their team won. If their team lost, there would be no food and the lights would be turned off. Now, the more eerie part was that if the winning team would go on a streak, then the food quality for the fans would also improve. And people did watch them, and these would make Tsuchiya one of the best producers Japan would ever see.
Day in an amusement park.
Marvelous verdict. There are many jokes about the incomprehensible Japanese reality shows, which makes sense considering we had a hard time understanding what Takeshi's Castle was, but somehow we did enjoy it at the expense of the person failing to win the challenge he was subjected to. This trend continues with a variety of failed shows that have made it through and how many fans enjoy watching people being put to the edge. But Hamatsu turned his life around and used his past to something that would do good to the people around him. For 13 months, he would be isolated from the world, but now some people look up to him for how he spent that one aspect of him that the producers abused for the good of the people around him. If you like our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.